And Bashan is called the land of giants. And that
Yeah.
Baal would go back and forth between earth and heaven every day through the gateway to Hades, or the cave that's located at the bottom of Mount Hermon. An extraordinary event, probably the most important event in humankind's history.
Yes.
And something big is going to be following, and that's going to be the crucifixion and the resurrection.
I want to focus in on the end times as well, because we see that he goes and he speaks to these spirits. But then we see in the book of Revelation, they will be released in the time of tribulation.
And that Nimrod is the first sort of king over the Noahites and introduces the Babel religion, which is the antediluvian religion.
Gary Wayne goes on the DLM Christian Perspective podcast, and he explains why Jesus brought the disciples to the mountain Bashan. This is wild stuff, and they talk about the significance of the sons of God and why exactly was Jesus asking the disciples this one question. So let's get into it. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. I'm trying to hit 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I know we can do it with your help. So thank you so much for all the love and support. It means the world.
I'm jumping the gun here a little bit, but maybe we can just, while we're discussing the mountain and importance of it, and as we look at throughout the generations, that there were these gods, Nephilim, that claimed to be the kings, and they ruled over it. We see throughout history, every time there were kings, important kings, that they claimed to be gods, even in the time of Jesus. So there's an important message here of why Jesus asked that question to Peter as well. But who do you say I am? And he said, "But you are the Son of God." But Gary, maybe you can explain a little bit just the context here for people to understand where they were and why he asked this
Yeah,
question.
yeah. And we talked about how important Mount Hermon is. And just Jesus and the disciples, they travel up to the Bashan region, which is,
So sorry, I said Bashan. I meant Mount Hermon.
the area below Mount Hermon. And Bashan is called the land of giants in the Bible.
Yeah.
Rapha is the Hebrew word there. And so, like Edrei and Ashtaroth were the capitals of King Og's 60 Pentapolis city states that were in the Bashan region. And there's other nations in there as well. But this area that Jesus and the disciples traveled to is Mount Hermon. So why travel there? It's like, that's a long ways to go from the Galilee or from Jerusalem. But they
Yeah.
did it. And
True.
it's Jesus announces with Peter that he's going to build his church on that rock. And Peter has his name changed,
Yeah.
meaning rock, right? That he's going to be the
Right.
rock of the church, just as Jesus is the supernatural rock to the church.
Right.
And they're going to the place where the council of the gods that we just talked about is centered at, in the council of the Detanu,
Huh.
as the Ugaritic text calls this assembly of the royales that was there at Mount Saphon or Mount Sion or Mount Hermon. And so they're announcing, Jesus is announcing to the gods who rule this earth, as Psalms 82 talks about with the council of the gods, that Satan sits above to counterfeit the imagery in Isaiah 14 that we also talked about of God's throne in heaven. Because everything polytheism does is a counterfeit or a
Right.
copy. And
Wow.
so this is the location that would represent where Baal ruled from. Baal and the Baalim gods that rule in this council in the Bible. And that
Yeah.
Baal would go back and forth between earth and heaven every day through the gateway to Hades, or the cave that's located at the bottom of Mount Hermon to Hades. And it's a, a worldwide known shrine even to this day. And the Pan Temple was located there as well.
That's right. I went there in Israel. Wow. That's wild to think about. That there would have been other gods being worshipped there, and their idea is that this is what's going on. But Jesus flipped the script and said, "No, on this rock I will build my church."
Which
Mm.
is right beside that cave. And so
Yeah.
Jesus is announcing to the ruling council of the gods that has rights over this earth, just as not that long ago in the time of Jesus, Satan showed Jesus all the different empires of the earth and offered it to him because he had legal right to at that point in time.
Yeah.
And Jesus was in a very weakened sort of state as he was fasting for 40 days
Wow.
in the wilderness.
Yeah.
And so Jesus has just announced to them that he is going to build his church. And with the starting of building that church, and with what the angels do not know at this point in time, because they're going to have him crucified, the princes, the archons, are going to have Jesus crucified. And if had they known about the resurrection, they would not have done that, as First
Right.
Corinthians talks about. That this is the start of that march towards the resolution to the angelic rebellion through the resurrection.
Yeah, thinking about if the angelic beings or demonic beings or whatever rebellious creatures knew what God had in store, what God's plan was in the first place, obviously they wouldn't crucify Jesus. They thought they were finally getting their chance to destroy the Son of God, the literal Son of God, once and for all, to get back at God. But their plan failed.
Mm.
And he's announcing he's going to build that to take that to the world through the rock, Peter.
Right.
And he's going to build his church upon that.
Hmm.
So this is an extraordinary event, probably the most important event in humankind's history.
Yes.
And something big is going to be following, and that's going to be the crucifixion and the resurrection, and the ability to give us that gift to become like the sons of God that
Yeah.
is given to us at the time of Pentecost in Acts 2 as a promise. Even though we have human fathers, to be raised up like angels in the future time through the resurrection process. There's several resurrections as it's described in the New Testament and the Old Testament. And that we will be not only like angels, but we will also judge those fallen angels for the
Right.
crimes they committed against us and
Wow.
against creation. And so this gets to be a significant um, event. And when you start to place that now in context with 1 Peter 3, where it's talking about Jesus after he's been crucified and his physical body has been killed, and he is could be in his spirit form, could be in his body form, we're not told, but he is in Hades or Sheol, and he goes to a place where the spirits are imprisoned. These
Yeah.
are the fallen angels, both before and after the flood, that created the giants and did the worst things to humankind. And these are also, as are in the sides of the pit prison in Ezekiel 32, the terrible one.
Yeah.
These are the worst of the giant, the offspring of the fallen angels. And he's speaking to them. Now, we're not told what he says to them, but within 3 days, he's going to be resurrecting. So we know it's going to have something probably to do with that. It's going to have something to do with the crimes that they did. And he's communicating with them. And my speculation is he is saying, just as I said, I was building my church and announced that at Mount Hermon, I am now telling you something that you didn't know, that I'm going to resurrect on the Sunday. And when I do, your rebellion is over, because through that.
Man, just thinking about the amazing design of who God is and his plan is way higher, way more vast than we could ever imagine. Even compared to the angels and the demons, God's plan is so much farther, so much harder to comprehend compared to the angels and the demons. Thinking about judging angels and demons, that's wild. I wonder, makes you think about what in the world have they done in our lives. Me, I don't want to give any responsibility to them. I don't like to give them that much control in my mind and my mindset. I want to take responsibility for myself in a way. Obviously I can't do everything on my own. I need Jesus.
Resurrection process, we're going to adopt humankind as my brothers and raise them up to be like angels and above angels as the inheritors of eternity. So this relationship is even being discussed in the greatest of terms
Yeah.
in the New Testament in the time of Jesus, and we don't get any context to these events taught in the
Yeah.
churches.
Hmm.
You're right. You're right. And it is so important because a lot of people say, well, we're all children of God. No, we're not. The New Testament says that only those who accept Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior has the right to become children of God, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
So there's all these details that you need to connect with all the verses. But I want to focus in on the end times as well, because we see that he goes and he speaks to these spirits. But then we see in the book of Revelation, they will be released in the time of tribulation, right? Which is, I don't want to live, I don't want to be there at that time. But
So are these the same spirits you think, or are these different spirits?
I want to go back to those same spirits to help people to understand why they are locked up in the pit. And so I want to go back a little bit because they overstep the boundaries, right? And those are the spirits we read about in Genesis 6, verse 4. So if we can start with Genesis 6, verse 4, move from there to explain how the fallen angels created the Nephilim. After that, the flood, that they were there as well, and then reigned over the world, establishing their kingdoms for centuries. And what happened 2,000 years ago, and from there to where we are now, and then to what's going to happen in times. There's a
Yeah,
lot to
so
go through.
there's a lot to cover there, so we'll try and move fairly quickly on this to get the information in. So in Genesis 6:4, the sons of God go to the daughters of men to create giants, as the KJV says. The Hebrew word is Nephilim is the plural, and this means a tribe of giants. It means a giant. Um, it means also a tyrant and a bully, which are just more descriptions in terms of who these giants are, just as in the Ugaritic text that we were talking about, or in Sumeria and elsewhere around the world, the gods are called bulls, and so are their offspring, the giants.
Mm.
And so when we hear about the bulls of Bashan that are mocking Jesus on the cross in the book of Psalms,
Huh.
these are the two groups that are being talked about. And tyrant goes back to the bloodline kings because the Nephilim take over the kingship dynasties both before and after the flood.
Right.
So that is tyrant is Tyrannos, as it was known in the Greek. And these were the Gyges kings, and these were bloodlines from, in their belief system, the Olympian gods.
Wow.
So, from Hercules, son of Zeus, and the human female alchemy after the flood. So we need to understand that these giants were real, and they took over the dynasties and the governorship and established polytheism all around the earth before the flood, which is why the flood is brought. And the technology that they had comes from the fallen angels, and that had the capability, I think, that had the capability to destroy the world by fire, which wasn't permitted.
Right.
That reserved, according to 2 Peter 3, for the end time. So God permits the flood to come, brings the flood, or orders the fallen angels to bring the flood themselves, as it's recorded in all the polytheist accounts, as part of the punishment, I think, to watch their offspring die.
That's so crazy. Man, what if all of these pagan gods were actually real spiritual deities? There's spirits behind them, and that's why people would worship them in the first place. It doesn't make sense thinking about human beings. If there was nothing behind it, I feel like they wouldn't worship it because people are very selfish and they want to live for themselves and do their own thing unless they feel like they can get something from it, something selfish, something evil, something prideful. I don't know.
Because God is doing an intercession and they are subservient to the God Most High, so that all the names in the book of life will have an opportunity to keep those names that were written in before creation or have it blotted out. So it's an intercession. And then this crosses the flood. These organizations, and we talked about this in part one of the two shows, and that Nimrod is the first sort of king over the Noahites and introduces the Babel religion, which is the antediluvian religion, but he's also going to intermarry amongst these giants in Sumer. And that's one of the reasons why we don't get his genealogy thereafter recorded in the table of nations.
Yeah.
And so you're going to create this hybrid race of humans and giants after the flood, and the giants after the flood, the Rephaim versus the Nephilim, which is used 25 times in the Old Testament versus Nephilim, which is only used 3 times.
Yeah.
And the Nephilim are antediluvian, and Rephaim tend to be more post-diluvian, although I do leave a small crack open for giants surviving the flood. But second incursion by the offspring gods, as we talked
Mm.
about part 1, the Baalim Council biblically, at Mount Hermon biblically, are the ones who created the Rephaim giants.
Huh.
And we see Rephaim in Genesis 14 and Genesis 15 as giant tribes. We also see where it says, whether it's in Deuteronomy 2 or the times of David, where it says giant, that's the Hebrew word Rapha, and Rephaim is as the plural.
Wow.
And we see Rephaim in Genesis 14 and Genesis 15 as giant tribes. We also see where it says, whether it's in Deuteronomy 2 or the times of David, where it says giant, that's the Hebrew word Rapha, and Rephaim is as the plural. So
Right.
Wow.
giants take over the dynasties again, set up just as they did before the flood, the first 2 classes with humans populating the small entrepreneurial class of blacksmiths and tailors, and then the slave and working class at the 4th level. And that's a constant around the world, both before and after the flood in all.
Interesting. So, I don't know. It doesn't make much sense though for when Abraham is called to be a separate nation, to be set apart, but he's like, but we will wait 400 years for those other nations to give them a chance. But he's still giving them a chance to repent and turn away from their wicked ways. But if they're the Nephilim or the descendants, it almost doesn't seem that it is justified, or wouldn't matter if they didn't repent. Or maybe they could have. I don't know.
Cultures, all continents around the world.
Yeah.
And so these are the ones that are ruling over us and trying to destroy us, because that's why they were created, so that we do not reach our destiny. So this pitched battle rages from the time of after the flood. Again, it resurges from the time of Noah to the time of Jesus. It's raging.
Right.
And even at all through that part, not even the fallen angels know what the end game for God is going to be, until the conversation that Jesus has with them, well, in Hades and Sheol and at the pit prison. And so from that point on, the fallen angels know the gig is up, but
Yeah.
they continue to mislead their spurious offspring that they can still win, and that they
Right.
can still achieve their goal. And they're out, and the fallen angels' only goal is to destroy as many so that they don't follow God and become saved. And so this is what has been transpiring from the time of Jesus till now. And there's a
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense for them to think that they could win. It's almost like they have just a chip on their shoulders. They know they've already lost and they're just super upset, so that they're just going to they're going to just do everything possible to make everyone else's life miserable. It's like you have that one friend who's super miserable, but she doesn't want anyone else to have a good time.
set time when all of this comes to a close in the end time.
Yeah.
And so all of these players, organizations, and agendas are in place as part of the context for the end time. So we have to sort of make those connections if we want to understand that we're not just fighting the visible ones, we're fighting the invisible ones. And it's
Right.
the invisible ones that are calling the shots, because the
Mm.
visible ones, the spurious offspring and the followers, are communicating with their superior celestial white masters, as they might be called, spirit guides,
Hmm.
aliens. You name the different things who they're communicating with, it's all part of the rebellious hierarchy that is trying to create a Star Wars event where you have the rebels fighting against the evil God of the universe, which is that rendezvous with destiny they want to bring on, because the fallen angels are still lying to humans and the hybrids that they can win this battle, that they can win their freedom to have a realm on their own where the gods can walk amongst them again and they can create new demigods going into the future. So that's the ambition. And one of the things that's important to understand in some of the context in the New Testament is that you do not hear about fallen angels, Old Testament or New Testament, who are slandering God or celestial beings. Even
Mm.
Michael, when he's dealing with Satan, is very
Mhm.
careful in the words that,
Yes.
he basically, and they're dealing with Moses' body, which is another interesting story.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
but um, all Michael does is basically say, God rebuke you, right?
Yeah.
So he doesn't do anything else, but he institutes his authority to reclaim Moses away from Satan.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's part of the upbringing of Moses. I don't have really time to go into today, but God knew all of this was going to happen, and he's trumping Satan's legal case to the oaths that Moses would have sworn at Heliopolis as being raised as a royale into the mystery religions and becoming an adept of those religions. For
Hmm. That is fascinating. There is a spiritual realm, that is for sure, and that is something that Paul warns us about. Like, we do not fight against flesh and blood, but against the principalities that rule in the unseen world. And that's important to think about as we do our day-to-day life, as we fight, as we do work, as we come in contact with random people who we get upset at. Like, they're not our enemy all the time. The one who is the prince of darkness, the evil one, completely against God's will. So shout out to DLM Ministries, DLM Christian Perspective, and Gary Wayne. That's super fascinating. I'd love to know what you guys think. If you haven't, please subscribe, hit the like button. I'm trying to hit 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I know we can do it with your help. So thank you so much for all the love and support. It means the world. Have an amazing day, and God bless.